أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. Continuing with our discussion which we started in the previous discussion, where we were discussing the topic of Wilayah Takwiniyah and Istighatha. As we mentioned that there is a link and a relationship between these two discussions, and that's why we are discussing them together. As we go further, we'll even show the link between the two, insha'Allah. So in the previous discussion, we had some introductory discussions. The first discussion we had was on the different stages and the different periods of the Shia theology and Kalam. And the reason we mention that is because as we go further, when you will be studying, as we will be studying the different opinions of the scholars, you will notice how the different periods and how the different understandings of the scholars affected their opinion on this topic. Okay, so this was the first discussion we had. The second discussion then we had was, because we said we want to have a structured discussion, a step-by-step discussion, we want to put everything in its place, and that is why then we ended up discussing the four types of Wilaya, okay? Because Wilayah Takwiniyah is one of the four types of Wilaya. That is why we ended up discussing the four types of Wilaya. This is where we had stopped, yeah? Inshallah today, if Allah gives tawfiq, if not, inshallah in the next discussion, because there's a small discussion I want to have before we get into the definitions. The important part of the discussion now will come into defining the terminology, okay? The defining the terminologies, and that's going to be one of the important discussions to keep in mind. But before we enter the discussion of defining these terminologies, I thought it's important for me, rather because of the situation we are living in and the circumstances I will explain as we go into our discussion, I felt it's important for me to get into a discussion where I would like to discuss the importance of discussing this topic, the reasons why we should be discussing this topic academically, okay? Now, I mentioned it very briefly in the previous discussion, but today I want to expound it a bit more further. So the first reason I mentioned that why I'm discussing this topic is because I said there were a few people who questioned me about this topic, and thus I thought once and for all I should at least discuss this issue. Especially when I discussed the whole issue of tawassul, then a lot of questions came up on istighatha, and that is why I'm discussing this. But the two last reasons, so the second and the third reason, are the most important reason as to why we should be discussing this topic, okay? So the second reason which I believe we should be discussing this topic is this. As I mentioned even in the previous discussion, is that when I heard the pro and the against, okay, the for and against discussions which are happening on Wilayah Takwiniyah in English language, I've not noticed anybody taking out the time to even start defining the terminologies they're using. Okay? Unfortunately, we are discussing a concept where we don't even know what the definition is. When we reach to the definitions, you will notice that scholars offer almost 7 to 8 definitions on Wilayah Takwiniyah. Now, some would say no, there are only 4 definitions. Some are facets of, and some are aspects of Wilayah Takwiniyah, but they are still part and parcel of the definition of Wilayah Takwiniyah. So you have almost 7 to 8 definitions of Wilayah Takwiniyah, and then we don't even know what we are discussing. Okay, this is important to keep in mind, that until we don't come and get the proper definition, we are not even understanding what we are talking about. Now, repercussion comes in is here. If you don't get a definition right, you are considered not to be a Shia. Now, as we go further, I will also show Sayyid Muhammad Rizwi's book, as quote a statement from that. What has happened is now scholars have started considering Wilayah Takwiniyah as part of the essentials of Shia madhab. Okay, it's one of the daruriyat of Shia madhab, the way they call it. That means if you don't believe in Wilayah Takwiniyah, then you're not a Shia. Okay, that's the meaning. Okay, now until you don't know what you're defining, what you are even believing in, how do you end up considering part of essentials of Shia madhab? Okay, and then when you come and see the 7-8 definitions, some scholars accept one definition, some scholars accept different definitions. There's huge discussion and huge dispute on this topic. So now what? We will be taking out scholars from one group and saying these are not Shias and these are Shias and these are Shias and these are... What is happening? And thus the importance of first defining the terminologies and coming to understand that what are we even discussing. Now, when we come to a conclusion, okay, this is the definition accepted by all Shia scholars, then we can say, okay, this is a part of the ruriyat of deen, an essential of deen or not, an essential of Shia madhab or not. Okay, that's the second stage. But we have jumped to the second stage before even performing the first stage. Okay, and that is why scholars who have written on this topic, they will come and tell you the first issue is to be able to sort the definition. So for example, there's a scholar by the name of, he's a Lebanese scholar by the name of Sheikh Hussein al-Khashin. He has written a book on ghulu. There's a portion on the topic of Wilayah Takwiniyah in the same book of ghulu. But what he did was then later he realized that there's a need to make a whole booklet out of it. So he has written a whole new book, basically taking the same things and adding some things into it, and he has come up with a new booklet called Al-Wilayah Takwiniyah. Okay, so it's a book. Okay, it's almost 220 plus pages. On page number 8, notice what he says, and this is what I say that scholarly, this is where we should be focusing on, rather than jumping on making conclusions without defining the concepts. So he says, وَمِنْ هُنَا كَانَ تَعْيِينُ الْمَقْصُودِ بِالْوِلَايَةِ التَّكْوِينِيَّةِ وَتَحْرِيرُ مَحَلِّ النِّزَاعِ هُوَ خُطْوَةُ الْأُولَى الضَّرُورِيَّةِ فِي هَذَا الْمَجَالِ. Okay, so the first initial step we need to take, okay, first necessary step we need to take is what? We should first identify what do we mean by Wilayah Takwiniyah. Okay, now he goes on further by saying that sometimes it such happens that وَحَتَّى لَا يَكُونُ النِّزَاعُ بَيْنَ الْقَوْمِ لَفْظِيًّا. Okay, sometimes it such happens that the discussion between the two groups just becomes a very verbal dispute. Okay, you believe in the same thing, because you have not defined the concepts nicely, and you're fighting and you're having a dispute over an issue you both believe in. Okay, that's the strange part. Also, it happens at times. Now sometimes no, a person believes in another opinion and a person believes in another opinion, but because they don't define it to each other and they don't understand each other, they start doing takfir of each other. Then that's also another issue. Okay, so the second reason for why we should be studying this topic is the importance of definitions and keeping the terminologies in its place. The third reason, and that I believe is the most important reason, and that's why I'm discussing this, and probably I might allude to these issues throughout this series in different ways, in different ways I might be referring to this issue now and again. Okay, now before I get into discussing this third issue, okay, there are a few points I just want to make it clear, so that I've clarified, because what I'm going to discuss is a bit sensitive, so I don't want to be misunderstood. Okay, so point number 1, my apologies from the beginning. Okay, I want to apologize from the beginning for using some terms and some words which might be uncomfortable. Okay, but the reason I'm using these words is because the Qur'an has somehow indicated to this understanding. Okay, and when I come and quote the verse, I will show you that what I was referring to. So the reason I'm referring to this kind of terminologies and using these kind of terminologies and words is because of Quranic understanding and Quranic usage of this words. Okay, number one. Number two, I feel, again, this is a responsibility Allah has put on us for those who are religious students to come and speak the truth we have reached to. Okay, and the reason is because on the day of judgment, if Allah holds my hand and says, Ali, what did you do? Okay, did you even speak about this when you saw the community going in this direction? Did you even speak about it? Okay, and thus I feel it's my responsibility, though some of the things which might talk are critical, there's sometimes we feel offended, but I'm not here to impose my views on you. I'm just here to speak about it. You keep your hand in your heart, the way the Iranians would say, you know, keep your hand in your heart and decide it for yourself in between you and Allah, that am I believing in the truth or no in the belief you have. If the belief you have is what you believe is true, you can answer Allah on the day of judgment. Beautiful. Okay, there's no worry. But what I'm feeling is that these beliefs which are propping up day by day in, day out, some of these beliefs are very questionable beliefs. Okay, so and thus we need to be able to speak about it. Okay, even as much as offensive it might sound. The third point I would like to make is, again, I am saying this with utmost humility, that I hope my analysis is wrong of what's happening in the communities. And again, I'm not referring to one particular community. It's a global Shia problem. Okay? In the Shia communities globally, you face these issues. And when I come and give examples, you'll notice I give examples from different communities. Okay? So I'm hoping my analysis is wrong of what I've understood. And if I'm wrong, I would be very glad to be guided again. But now we need to mention these days, because strangely we live in a world where debates and argumentation has become the norm of the day. Yeah? So as long as somebody guides me with beautiful evidences and with good akhlaq, I would be more than happy to accept the criticism and change my views. Okay, so that's the third point. And the fourth point, before I get to the discussion, the fourth point I would like to make is that I'm not generalizing what I'm discussing. Okay, so don't take it as a general principle and a general formula and apply it to every Shia in every community. No, we have exceptions. But the reason I'm mentioning is this, because there are now huge movements within the Shia people and the Shia communities going in this direction. And that is why we are being forced to mention all this, what we are mentioning. Okay? So keeping these points in mind, we come back to our discussion. Okay? We said we were discussing the importance of Wilayah Takwiniyah, the importance of discussing the whole concept of Wilayah Takwiniyah and Istighatha. If we don't, then the consequences are being seen in the communities. And what's the consequence? This is the consequence I'm referring to. Okay? And I said the wordings might look a bit offensive, but this is the Quranic understanding. We as Shias, as I said, I'm not talking about the Sunni brothers. The Sunni brothers have their own problems also. They have also issues of their own they need to sort for themselves. At the moment, I'm addressing and I'm talking to Shia communities, okay? And my Shia brothers, that we seem to be allergic, okay? This is the word I was referring to. We seem to be feeling disgustful when we start hearing the word Qur'an and Allah. Okay? Whenever we hear the name Qur'an and any verses being referred from the Qur'an, we start feeling allergic very quickly. When we hear the name Allah and we start feeling allergic and we say, oh, this is Wahhabis and this is not us. I'll give examples as we go further. So come to the Qur'an. And this you must have noticed it, and this is something I've noticed even within the Shia seminaries, okay? Even if you come to the Hawza, you will notice these problems are existing, okay? So we can't say we are hiding from these problems. Whenever you're discussing with somebody and you end up quoting a verse to that person which confirms with the belief of that person, he will quickly grab that verse and start using it throughout, okay? Without referring to hadith, without referring to a scholarly opinion. And I'm mentioning this for a reason, okay? Without referring to any hadith, without referring to any scholarly opinion, they will quickly use the apparent meaning of that verse and say, see, this is what our beliefs are in the Qur'an also. Now the problem comes in is here, and this is where the allergies are starting. Whenever a verse of Qur'an is quoted which is against our belief, which is against our preconceived notions and our beliefs, we suddenly start becoming allergic now. How do we do it? So we start using this meaning now, we start using this excuse. We are not followers of the methodology of Hasbuna Kitabullah. I don't know how many times have you heard that, yeah? We are not followers of the theory of Qur'an alone only. We refer to Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam for Quranic understanding, if they are akhbaris. And if they are usulis, then they will tell you, no, we also need scholarly understanding over the hadith also, okay? Now this is where the allergy is now coming in. And it's because we are not sorting some issues up there. These are the allergies which are coming down now, okay? And you come and now talk to somebody and you tell him that, Baba, you are the same person who refers to verses over verses over verses without referring to hadith, without referring to scholarly opinion. You take the apparent meaning and you confirm your belief with it. But whenever a verse is quoted to you which doesn't confirm with your belief, suddenly you start becoming allergic. Okay, and the verse is clear also, okay? There's nothing, it's not mutashabih, it's not ambiguous, it's not majaz, it's not metaphorical. It's a clear-cut verse, and still they will start saying, no, this verse, who are you first, you know? And then, are you a scholar? We need scholarly opinion. This is what I'm trying to say, that the allergy is coming to this level that we are now ignoring the word of Allah and taking the word of a scholar over the word of Allah. Now for me, I want to clarify, okay, the ahadith are also important, the scholarly opinions are also important, otherwise we would not be studying them, okay? For us they're important, but the word of Allah takes priority and precedence over everything. When the word of Allah comes in, then the hadith is thrown aside, the way the Imams themselves have said. A scholar tells you something which is against the words of Allah, then you need to throw it away. Now, unless we are akhbaris and we say, no, we don't give precedence to the Qur'an as scholars have done it, inshallah, in subsequent discussions in the future, we will show. Within Shias and Sunnis, they don't give preference to the Qur'an as a primary criteria, okay? Yes, then if that is the case, you go to hadith and scholars before you come to the Qur'an, then that's a methodology you have adopted. You answer on the day of Allah to Allah, okay? Look at how Allah addresses this issue in the Qur'an. In Surah Baqarah, verse number 87, and Allah has referred to this in several verses in the context of Ahlul Kitab, okay? But addressing even the Muslims in the process also, okay? Notice Allah tells Allah is talking to the Ahlul Kitab. He says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابِ. These are the Jews of that time, okay? We gave Musa alayhi salam the book. And then after him we sent different prophets. وَآتَيْنَا عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ. We gave Isa alayhi salam clear signs and verses. I'm stressing on this. Bayyinat. And this is what we are going through also. When clear verses are brought in and we still start doing this, what the Ahlul Kitab were doing. Notice the verse then goes on. This is the statement I'm interested in. أَفَكُلَّمَا جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ بِمَا لَا تَهْوَى أَنفُسُكُمْ إِسْتَكْبَرْتُمْ. Okay? Whenever the prophets come with clear verses and clear signs from Allah, you are people, the verses are clear, but just because they don't confirm with your desires, they don't confirm with your beliefs, they don't confirm with your preconceived notions, istakbartum, you become arrogant, you do istikbar. Wallah, a'udhu billah, Allah save us from this quality, that in front of Allah we come and say, no, certain scholarly opinion is taking a precedence over the words of God. No. Okay? As much as the scholarly opinion is very respected, the words of Allah takes precedence over everything. Okay? And this is exactly the problem they were facing also, that they would give preference to other things over and that is why they started showing istikbar now, arrogance. And this is one of the worst qualities which dropped Iblis from where he was to where he has become. Okay? So, look at where arrogance now leads people to. فَفَرِيقًا كَذَّبْتُمْ. It doesn't stop with arrogance. Now with arrogance you start denying the truth also. Arrogance doesn't allow you to accept the truth. Okay? Not only that, وَفَرِيقًا تَقْتُلُونَ. You don't suffice with arrogance. You don't suffice with denying the truth. Rather, you now become violent and start going towards murdering people. This is exactly what we are seeing today with the Zionist regime today. We are the chosen people, arrogance. Okay? Where does it lead to? Lead to you kadhabtum. You start denying every truth possible. You're killing civilians. No, we are the chosen people. We are allowed to do everything we are allowed to do. Okay? Bring them the truth and they will deny the truth. This is what Allah is warning us to. Okay? This allergy suddenly has become like we don't want to listen the word of Qur'an anymore. And that's this direction now we see that, we don't suffice with the Qur'an. We are also interested in hadith and interested in scholarly opinion. This was in regards to Qur'an. Come to Allah now. This is the discussion related to our discussion of Wilayah Takwiniyah. There's suddenly now, and I'm saying this with utmost humility, if we don't sort this problem, my brothers and sisters, the direction our communities are going into, we will need to answer Allah on the Day of Judgment for all this what's happening. Okay? The allergy which is coming up with the name of Allah, the moment you start mentioning, and this something happened with me personally also, okay? And you must have experienced it also. The moment you start emphasizing on Allah, 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 a quick label of Wahhabism comes on you. Okay? I remember giving a talk on Tawassul a few years ago, and one of the criticism which was against me was this, you are stressing a lot on Allah, you're not focusing on Ahlul Bayt. Okay? And this is where I come and say the prophets and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, they all came to guide us to Allah. They didn't come to tell us that we should get stuck to them. Okay? They are the means to Allah. They are not the end. Today, unfortunately, we are taking them as the end. We are taking them as a result. Or rather, we should take them as a means to take us to Allah. They came to take us to Allah. Their whole life was filled with Allah. Okay? So look at the examples. Look at the examples from the Qur'an, and then I come back to giving practical examples of why I believe what I believe in. This is verse number 79 in Surah Al Imran. A general principle Allah gives in the Qur'an. ما كان لبشر أن يؤتيه الكتاب والحكم والنبوة. Allah doesn't give any human prophethood. Okay, so Allah doesn't give anybody any prophethood, the station of prophethood, and then that prophet should come and turn to his people. ثم يقول للناس كونوا عبادا لي من دون الله. Okay, This prophet should turn back to his people and say, worship me, get close to me, be my servant, okay? Seek my pleasure. No prophet does that. No prophet does that he invites people to himself. No prophet has done that. This is a clear verse of the Qur'an. Now some might come and say, oh, this is not the clarity which is coming out. Okay? What do the prophets do? And this is what exactly the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam also did. وَلَكِنْ كُونُوا رَبَّانِيِّينَ. The purpose of the prophets and the Imams was to guide us to Allah, to connect us to Allah, to make us God-like. And that's why their whole life was filled of God, 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 and God alone. Okay? And verse number 80, then Allah goes on further was saying that وَلَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تَتَّخِذُوا الْمَلَائِكَ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ أَرْبَابًا. This verse is so clearly connected to the discussion of Wilayah Takwiniyah, okay? That Allah doesn't command you to take the angels and the prophets as arbab, as your masters and your lords, you know. There's one master in this universe. There's one Rabb. And that is why in Surah Yusuf, Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam tells the prisoner who was with him, Ya sahib al-sijn, أَأَرْبَابٌ مُتَفَرِّقٌ خَيْرٌ أَمِ اللَّهِ الْوَاحِدِ الْقَهَّارِ. Are we going to take different masters and different lords and different people we listen to as our administrators and those? Or no, we take one Lord as our Lord, who is the Lord of the universe. Okay? So, the prophets and the Imams came to guide us to Allah and Allah alone and nobody else. Okay? Look at another verse in the Qur'an. Surah Nahl, verse number 36. But look at 35. It's interesting. When we read this Qur'an contextually, then you come and understand how important the Qur'an is. Okay? You will understand it very differently. So look at verse number 35. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا. The disbelievers and the mushrikeen would come to the Prophet and say, لَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا عَبَدْنَا مِن دُونِهِ مِن شَيْءٍ. If Allah would have wished, we would have not worshipped anybody but Him. Allah. So the meaning they're taking is because Allah doesn't wish it, that's why we are worshipping other than Him. Okay? Now, we would say, okay, we don't worship other than Allah, no problem. Look at the second part of the verse now. وَلَا حَرَّمْنَا مِن دُونِهِ مِن شَيْءٍ. Now, haramna here means to sanctify, okay? Masjidul Haram means a sanctified mosque, okay? When you sanctify somebody, you respect and honor somebody, okay? That's haram. The word haram comes from something being sanctified, and that's why it's called haram, okay? Because it's something it's not allowed to, it's sanctified and all whatnot, okay? So, وَلَا حَرَّمْنَا مِن دُونِهِ مِن شَيْءٍ. They would come and tell the Prophet, but we would not sanctify and glorify and honor anything else apart from God if Allah would have not wished it. Something we are seeing in our communities now. Okay? So then Allah then turns back to the Prophet and tells them, okay, tell them, فَحَلْ عَلَى الرُّسُلِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينَ. The duty of the prophets is just to come and give you the message. You accept it, beautiful. You don't want to accept it, beautiful also. It's upon you. Okay? Verse number 36 now. Look at the duty of the prophets, responsibility of the prophets. The prophets were connecting us to Allah and Allah alone. I don't know where has this idea come from that now we need to connect to others apart from Allah. No. وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا. We appointed and we sent a messenger to every nation possible. Okay? We sent to every nation a prophet. What was the duty? Not to invite to themselves, to get close to the prophets. No. أَنْ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. What you're going to do is get connected to Allah and Allah alone and stay away from everything that disconnects you from Allah. Do you get me? Okay? So this was the purpose of the Imams also. The Prophets and the Imams came to guide us to this whole concept of Allah, not to themselves. Okay, now look at what's happening now in our communities, and then I give you further verses also now. I was listening to a scholar on the member. This is on the pulpit, and this is all because of Wilayah Takwiniyah. I'm sorry to say this, but the moment we don't sort this problem, everything in the name of Wilayah Takwiniyah now is being given to the Imam. Because there's no clear definition for this concept. And thus, Imam is the authority, so Imam can do anything. Okay? So, I was listening to this scholar. I'll give you a few examples. He was like, the question which comes in, and this is a real question which needs to be asked. It's Shias and Sunnis. As I said, I'm not talking about the Sunnis, but within Shias, you'll see the Sunnis talk about Sahaba even more than, okay? So even when the Salafis talk about Tawheed, strangely, those people who don't understand the Salafis are not talking about Tawheed, unfortunately, okay? They are stuck in their Sifat controversy. Now, for those of you who don't know what Sifat controversy is, my apologies. You can refer to, in English, Dr. Yasir Qadhi has a good book on Salafism. His lectures also has discussed this a lot of times. When he says all what the Wahhabis and the Salafis are doing is stuck in the Sifat controversy. So for them, Tawheed means Sifat controversy, and after that they use this Sifat controversy to do takfir of the others. Okay, they do takfir of everybody else. This is not the Allah we are looking for. This is not the Quranic Allah we are looking for. This Allah. Okay, now when you come to the Shias, you will notice the focus now is turned to major issues about imama. Now some scholars mention it very clearly. So this scholar on the pulpit, he was like, the reason we focus on imama more and we don't talk about Tawheed is because our imama has been stolen away from us. And that's why we focus on imama more than Tawheed. I would say, dear Shaykh, your Tawheed has been stolen also. And the reason Tawheed has been stolen is just go in your communities back and see back that is Allah really existing in the communities. Look at your community life. Look at the business life, cheating, corruption, all together. Look at the marriage life, full of divorce and cheating and all what's happening. If Allah was really present in our lives, is this what our life would have been? All of fighting and all what not? I remember, I'm sorry, today I'm taking this time from you. I'll just finish this topic and we'll go to the definitions in the next discussion, inshallah. Now, I don't know if this is a joke or this is a reality, but there's a person who went to a non-Muslim country as a Muslim, and he was like, he went to a restaurant and he asked for halal food. So the person turned back to him, and the person was a non-Muslim apparently. He turns back to him and he says, but you people, you are so much interested in halal food, but everything going in your tummy and in your business accounts and in your bank accounts is haram. You're not worried about corruption, you're not worried about cheating, you're not worried about, deceiving others. All you're worried about this food which is going in this piece of meat. Yes, it has to be halal, I'm not denying that. But look at the understanding. We're leaving the actual thing and sticking to the secondary. The main thing is the business deals and transactions and how we lead our life. That has to be in a halal manner. Okay? This is exactly what we are facing also. Tawheed is actually missing. Okay? So to come and say that, we are talking about imama because Tawheed is there but imama is not there. No, Tawheed is also missing in our lives, unfortunately. Okay? And look at the verse of the Qur'an now, and this is exactly the allergy which I was talking about. Look at the Qur'an has used the word allergy here now. This is Surah Bani Israel, verse number 46. وَجَعَلْنَا عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ أَكِنَّةً أَن يَفْقَهُوهُ. The disbelievers was such that Allah had put a veil in their hearts that they would not understand. The verses were being recited to them, they would not understand. Allah says we put deafness in their ears. That means whenever they wanted to listen to the truth, they would not be able to listen. Rather, they themselves would close and block their ears. Yeah, this is what the Qur'an also talks about. Now, this is the verse, and this is the part. O Prophet, وَإِذَا ذَكَرْتَ رَبَّكَ فِي الْقُرْآنِ وَحْدَهُ. O Prophet, whenever you talk about Qur'an, whenever you talk about Allah alone in the Qur'an, they don't like it. Not only they don't like it, they become allergic to it. وَلَّوْ عَلَىٰ عَدْبَارِهِمْ نُفُورًا. Okay? The Qur'an is very specific, Ya Allah. They do tawalla ala adbarihim. They turn on their backs. So the message of Allah is being recited to them. They turn their backs away. Nufura. They become allergic to it. They get disgustful. They hate it. They have nafra to it. Okay? And unfortunately, I'm worried we are going in the same direction. Whenever Allah is mentioned alone, we suddenly don't like it anymore. Okay, we don't seem to be liking it anymore. Or in Surah Zumar, verse number 45, وَإِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ إِشْمَعَزَّتْ قُلُوبُ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ. Those who didn't believe in Akhirah, whenever Allah was mentioned alone in front of them, they would start feeling disgusting within themselves. This is the word I was using, allergic, okay? They become allergic to it. We don't want to listen to this word anymore. But وَإِذَا ذُكِرَ الَّذِينَ مِن دُونِهِ إِذَا هُمْ يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ. Okay? But anybody else apart from Allah is mentioned in front of them, the idols in this case, they would be happy. This is a verse for us also. That when Allah is mentioned in front of us and then others are mentioned, even if it be prophets, okay, even be imams, they're very respectful, but these are prophets and imams who connect us to Allah. We should not be stuck and sacrifice Allah for the sake of these beloved personalities. No, okay? These personalities came to sacrifice their lives for their Lord. Okay, so look at the examples now. I want to keep on giving examples today only. I remember listening to an Urdu speaker, and he was invited to a place to give a majlis, a lecture. So the person who was inviting him, he told him that, Agha, what should I write as the topic of your lecture? So he tells him, write Dars Qur'an. Okay, lessons from the Qur'an. Qur'an means Allah is talking to us. So the one who had invited him turns back to the scholar and says, Agha, log nahi aayenge. This is the reality which we are facing, unfortunately. Allergy towards Qur'an and Allah. I'm sorry to say this. And I'm, again, with utmost humility, I might be wrong in my analysis. As I said, if I can be guided that I'm wrong, but this is the state we are going through. Comes to Qur'an, comes to Allah, and we don't want to come to. Look at how many people listen to qasidas, how many views you get for nawhas and marsiyas. 2.5 months of Muharram and Safar is coming. It's a beautiful time where we connect to Allah and Allah alone. The Imam is connecting us to Allah and Allah alone, and see what is happening. 2.5 months we just listen. How much that's why I say keep your hand in your heart and judge yourself. How much we listen to Qur'an in these 2.5 months, and how much we listen to nawhas and qasidas and marthiyas. I'm not against nawhas and qasidas. Okay? These are beautiful things. But I'm saying what is being given the priority. Are you getting me? Okay? This is one example. A second example I would like to give. This is I've heard this several times, but just because I received a clip yesterday only, it was shared, and people love such things also, unfortunately. This scholar was quoting this example, again, and that's why I'm saying when the Quranic understanding doesn't accept this, they refer to dreams then. So this scholar was saying that a famous orator in Iran, without mentioning his name also, was narrating this. He says after he died, he came in the dream of his friend. Okay, this is where we go into dreams only then. He was quoting his dream for his friend, and the friend then quoted it to others apparently. He says that when I turned to him and told him that what helped you in Akhirah, what helped you in Barzakh? So it's like none of my prayers were accepted by Allah. I'm referring to very clearly saying this. None of it was accepted by Allah. None of my fasting, none of my ibadat were accepted by Allah. None of my majalis were also accepted by Allah. Except one majlis was accepted by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Can you see now the dangers? Okay? The godly duties now we are starting to give to the Imams now. Why? Because we are not sorting this issue of Wilayah Takwiniyah. Until we don't sort this matter, everything in the name of Wilayah Takwiniyah is now being given to the Imams. And I'll come and quote the verses for you and show you that how the verses are there, which clearly says in the Qur'an that it's Allah's domain to accept, nobody else's. Okay? And then we come and say, no, Imam Hussein. So the story goes like this. So the scholar says that the scholar was this famous orator. You know, famous orators normally don't prefer going to give lectures in small gatherings. They prefer huge audiences. Now that's their preference or whatever. I'm not into their intentions. Yeah. So he says one day a very poor lady came and invited him and said, "Can you please come and recite in my home?" She was poor, she had nothing, she would invite a small crowd, she could not even pay as much as what is being paid, yeah? So the guy then responds and says, okay, I will come, and he goes to recite. And then she eventually stresses and insists that he should accept the hadiyah, which is a small token. He ends up accepting. Now, this orator is now telling his friend in the dream that it was only this one majlis. Now, I was expecting the author, the scholar who was narrating this dream, to come and say that Allah accepted this one majlis. But look at now what? When there is a rejection, Allah comes in. Allah rejected fasting, Allah rejected salah, Allah rejected all the ibadah. When it comes to acceptance now, Imam Hussein is being brought in. Do you get me? And look at the Qur'an now. I could refer to plenty of verses, okay? Refer to Surah Al Imran, verse number 37. Refer to Surah Ibrahim, verse number 40. Refer to Surah Tawbah, verse number 104. Refer to Surah Shura, verse number 25, okay? All these verses will tell you that it's only and only Allah's prerogative to accept the a'mal, okay, and the actions of the people. It's not anybody else's. But I will quote one verse from Surah Ma'idah, verse number 27. Surah Ma'idah, verse number 27, in the context of the story of the children of Adam alayhi salam. Both of them were told to sacrifice. You know the story, yeah? They were told to sacrifice, and both of them sacrificed. One sacrificed was accepted, the other one's was rejected. Okay? In the end, Allah gives this final principle. And notice, Allah starts with this particle. Okay, He starts with this word. He says, Innama. You see, I'm sorry to say this, but we Shias, again, as I say, we selectively read the Qur'an. And it's every sect, okay? But I'm just addressing the Shias at the moment. Innama, in verse number 33 of Surah Ahzab, where we prove, and rightly so, okay, as I believe also, that we believe in the infallibility and prove the infallibility of the five infallibles from that. Innama yuridu Allahu liyudhiba ankum. Okay? One of the proofs to prove the infallibility of the five is the word innama here, the particle innama. Innama is referred for exclusivity, okay? When you want to give you want to give exclusivity, hasr, the way they say in Arabic, you say this particular group only, okay? So now the same particle is being used in Surah Ma'idah, verse number 27. It says, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Surely and verily, none but Allah accepts the a'mal from the muttaqeen. It's only Allah's prerogative and domain to accept the a'mal, not anybody else. But where do we go to? We start going towards the imams. I again have to keep on stressing the imams are respectful for me. I personally am a follower of the imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. I believe they're chosen ones, okay, by the Prophet, okay. But one thing which we need to do is we can't give them what doesn't belong to them. Okay, and thus I'm trying to say is that we need to sort this topic of Wilayah Takwiniyah, because today you refer to anybody and they will tell you, and this is scholars also, they will tell you that in the name of Wilayah, imams have authority. They can do this, they can give you, they can take from you. Even the marsiyas and qasidas and all, you listen, yeah, and you will hear these things happening. I give final two examples. My apologies again, I have delayed again. And this is what I was trying to say. This is becoming a movement now, okay? It's becoming a trend. This is what is worrying. Otherwise, we would not be discussing these issues. There's a movement within the Indo-Pak, okay? And it's a movement which is spreading slowly. Is that now instead of saying Salamun Alaykum, which is the Sunnah, which is the prescription of the Qur'an, the Sunnah of the Prophet, the Sunnah of the angels, the Sunnah of the Prophets, we are leaving this and now introducing Ya Ali Madad now. One of the biggest issues we have with our Ismaili brothers is this: Baba, you are leaving the Sunnah of the Prophet and introducing your own Sunnahs now. Okay? The Sunnah of the Prophet, there's a Quranic injunction very clear to say فَقُلْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ. Okay? And what are we doing now? We are becoming opposite now, unfortunately. Introducing this Ya Ali Madad now. And unfortunately, I heard a scholar also on the mimbar quoting a hadith of the Prophet. He says, you should be remembering Ali now and again. He says, that's why we start our conversations with Ali's name. And we have to say, Ya Ali Madad. If that is the case, the Prophet would have done himself. Okay? And I'll come in, if I again get time, I will quote some verses. Another trend which is again starting, and this is in Iran, and that's why I say that it's becoming a global phenomenon now, okay? This is globally a problem now. In Iran now it's becoming an issue. When they bid farewell with each other, we would say Khuda Hafiz, fi amanillah, you be in Allah's protection. Allah should protect you, okay? Wallahu khayru hafidhan. This is what the Qur'an says, okay? But notice now, where are we going to? It's becoming a trend. Even scholars do that. Ya Ali Madad. You're leaving the Sunnah of the Prophet and introducing other Sunnahs. All in the name of what? This Wilayah Takwiniyah. Go talk to them and you ask them that how come you're abandoning the Sunnah of the Prophet and introducing something else? So they have Wilayah. Okay? And that's why I'm keeping on insisting that until this topic is not sorted, we'll keep on introducing beliefs over beliefs and actions over actions and rituals over rituals and everything ascribe it to Wilayah. Okay? Now, finally, look at the Sunnah of the Prophet and look at our examples of where we are going. Salam, okay? Those who enter paradise, Jannah, da'awahum, this is the Qur'an, okay? Da'awahum fiha subhanak Allahumma. وتحيتهم فيها سلام وآخر دعواهم عن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Beautiful. Quran is Allah, 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 nothing but Allah, okay? So those who go in paradise and Jannah, they begin their discussion with Allah, In the middle they discuss Allah, and they end their discussion with Allah. وَآخِرُ دَعْوَاهُمْ أَنِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Do you see this? Okay. The prophets also. وَلَقَدْ جَاءَتْ رُسُلُنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ بِالْبُشْرَى. When the angels came to Ibrahim alayhi salam to give him the glad tidings about a son, قالوا, they didn't say Ya Ali Madad, قالوا سلاما. Okay, they said Salamun alaykum, Allah's protection and peace be upon you. And the Imam and the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam replies, Qala salamun. Okay. Rather, the Qur'an is very categorical whenever you meet a believer. The initial stance you have to take, the initial beginning action you have to take is وَإِذَا جَاءَكَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِآيَاتِنَا فَقُلْ. O Prophet, tell them that whenever you meet a believer, فَقُلْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ. And that's why the Holy Prophet used to begin, even the children when he used to meet, he used to say Salamu alaykum, not something else. كَتَبَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الرَّحْمَةِ. This explains why you need to do salam. Because Allah's mercy accompanies that salam. Okay? And that's why the sunnah of the Prophet was to do salam. And that's why the prophets and the imams, whenever they used a small occasion, they would look for an excuse to remember Allah. And this is my final point. They would look for an excuse and a reason to remember Allah. They would not remember anybody else. They would remember Allah. Their focus was Allah and Allah alone. They were the means to guide us to the real cause, who is Allah and nobody else. Okay, so notice, if you people get time to read this book Sunanun Nabi, I'm giving an English reference so you can refer to it. It's a beautiful book. Some things you might, there's a whole discussion on sunan and adab and all whatnot. I've partially touched on in my previous discussions. Okay. But it's a beautiful book in the sense that Allama Tabatabai wrote this book with the intention that he wanted to emulate the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, one of the principles we have in Usulul Fiqh and in our Hadith literature is this: that whenever a sunnah of the Imam or anybody else collides with the sunnah of the Prophet, then the sunnah of the Prophet takes the precedence. And thus this book becomes very important. It becomes a criteria also. Now some ahadith are da'if into it and all, I'm not denying, okay? It needs a kind of that study, but it's a beautiful book to just look at the sunnah and the adab of the Holy Prophet. Go through it. I've highlighted several places in the book. I'm just giving one example. Throughout the book, you will notice that the Holy Prophet just looked for a small reason to remember Allah. Small reason. An excuse to remember Allah. Okay? So, on page number 110 of this book has been translated in English by Sheikh Tahir Jafar. Beautiful translation also, you can refer to it. He's quoting this hadith from Man La Yahduru al-Faqih of Sheikh Saduq. He says, Muawiyah bin Ammar quotes from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, when the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi was on a journey, notice, use a small reason, wallahi. The Holy Prophet looks for a reason only. He says, whenever he used to descend from an elevation, we come down how many times from our house? We don't think about it. It's a normal thing for us to come up and down. But the Holy Prophet, look at him. This is what Allah, Tawheed means. Okay? Whenever he would descend from an elevation, he would recite the tasbih, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. Okay? And then whenever he would ascend on an elevation, he would recite takbir, Allahu Akbar. Use just a small excuse and remember Allah. Use a small excuse to get back to Allah. This is their life. And then we come and say, no, we want to get attached to them rather than this Lord they were guiding us to. Okay? In conclusion, I'm sorry, I didn't get into the definitions, which was the actual discussion we were supposed to have. But I feel this discussion was important also for us. The reason being is this: until we don't sort out the definitions, we don't sort out this discussion academically, all these issues will keep on creeping in within our communities. It will reach a place where it will be hard now, and it's becoming hard at times to even justify some of the practices to the outside world, okay? To our outside brothers also, to those who are not Shias, to tell them what we are doing. Because some of the practices are just outside control. You can't justify them anymore. In the name of what? Wilaya. Okay? Now, as we go further, we will then get into the methodology of how to study Wilayah Takwiniyah. Also, that's even important also, okay? Let's pray to Allah to give us the tawfiq to be able to understand and have the real ma'rifah of Allah, the way the Prophet, the way Allah Himself taught us, and then the Prophet and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam taught us, and to follow the teachings of the Prophet and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in the right way, inshaAllah. And again, we pray for the madhlumeen and the oppressed throughout the world. The oppressions are going on and on. World Cup is starting, and you see how what's going on, okay? Allah bless us in the world we are living in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.